Shivadam Tapa Trayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparir Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra Krite Bihi Sususubhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam Sukhamukad amritam dravya samyutam Srimad Bhagavatam Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam Muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, even though its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, text number 47. 48? Okay. Yeah. King Yudhisthira said, O my lot, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many, many phalanxes of men. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A solid phalanx of 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, and 109,650 infantry, and 65,600 cavalry is called an Akshohini. And many Akshohinis were killed in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Maharaj Yudhisthira, as the most pious king of the world, takes for himself the responsibility for killing such a huge number of living beings because the battle was fought to reinstate him on the throne. This body is, after all, meant for others. While there is life in the body, it is meant for the service of others. And when it is dead, it is meant to be eaten by dogs and jackals or maggots. He is sorry because of such a such a temporary body. He is sorry because for such a temporary body, such a huge massacre was committed. So this is understandable in one sense, because the real battle was between the sons of Dhritarashtra and the sons of Pandu. But it so happened that so many other people died because they took sides. So there's an interesting point here, that is that when you take the side of the wrong person, whatever happens to that person happens to you. So we have to be very careful about which side we choose. If we choose the wrong side, even if you have the stature of Bhisma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and so many great personalities, they're all destined to die or be defeated because they chose the wrong side. And they chose the wrong side for different reasons, just like Bhismadev, because he was beholden to Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana because they were maintaining him materially, and because he had promised always to protect the Kuru dynasty. So there were many reasons why he was duty-bound to follow Duryodhana. So he knew that because the Pandavas were protected by the principles of religion and the instructions of their gurus and the friendship of Krishna, so therefore they were going to be not conquerable, they were invincible. And then Duryodhana, although he was a good manager, he was not a good devotee. So I remember one time Prabhupada told, I was recommended to Prabhupada as being a good manager. And Prabhupada wrote back to Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and he said, that's very good, is a good manager, but in Krishna consciousness one must be a good devotee also. So it's not enough just to be a good manager, you have to also be a good devotee. And that's why Prabhupada insisted that all his managers strictly follow the regulative principles. You can't be a genuine good manager in the full sense of the word unless you're strictly following all the regulative principles, because your job as a manager is to make sure everybody else is following the regulative principles. So if you don't follow yourself, how are you going to make sure everybody else follows? It's not possible. So here, Maharaj Yudhisthira, again, has a soft heart. That's very clear that he has a soft heart. And that's, in one sense, it's a sign of a devotee. Even Arjuna, who's such a powerful fighter, I mean, Maharaj Yudhisthira also was a Kshatriya, and he was a powerful fighter, but Arjuna was number one in fighting and killing. He also had a soft heart, and Prabhupada mentions that in the first chapter. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bhurishrava, who was his father's contemporaries, grandfathers Bhisma and Somadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Salya and Sakuni, brothers like Duryodhana, sons like Lakshmana, friends like Asvatthama, well-wishers like Kritavarma, etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up." In the purport, Prabhupada explains, any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And while he was so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver, and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still, one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavat Yakinchana Sarvar Gunais Tatra Samasate Sura Haravavaktasya Kuto Mahat Guna Manoratanasati Dhavato Bayi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. So the other night, Friday night, during a class I was giving, I explained. I asked the kids some questions, and they were answering the following. I think the question I asked is, do your friends at school, at lunch, eat meat? And most of them said, well, we try and avoid friendship with the materialistic kids. I said, but do you ever watch people eating meat? He said, well, we try and sit apart from them, but sometimes it happens that we sit with them, and yes, they eat meat. I said, then they're demons. And then one lady protested, how can you say that? You know, I mean, I know many people eat meat, but they're good people. And she said, I used to work in a company in India, and the manager was an Indian woman who was a Christian, and she would let us perform Diwali ceremonies during Diwali, you know, and she was a nice lady. She was very moral and nice, but she ate meat. How can you say they're demons? I said, well, I don't say. Shastra says. He said, but I don't understand. I said, I didn't understand either. This verse from 5th Canto, 18th chapter, verse number 12, I looked at it for many years, and I always was shaking my head, because I also knew people who were not devotees, who sometimes were better than devotees in their behavior. But then, after a long time, I understood what was being said, and I no longer had that opinion. And I said, this lady who is a Christian, and she was your, let's say, immediate boss, and she had a whole bunch of people working under her, and most of them were Hindus. So she's a very clever person, very intelligent person, and she was thinking, well, I have to keep the loyalty of these people because I have to ask them to give me deliverables. And if I create some kind of antagonism due to religious differences, this would not be a good thing for my job. And I want to keep my job, and I want to advance in my job. So one thing is not only telling people what to do, but also having a friendly, collegial, and cooperative workers under me. So therefore, they celebrate this Diwali. Some of them are worshiping Shiva, some of them are worshiping Krishna, whatever. So I'll just let them do it for 15 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour of work time, and keep the peace in the group. I said that doesn't mean that she is moral or she's a pure devotee. She's calculating based on her ability to make more money and keep her position. It's a material calculation. That's what it means. What it means, manoratanasati dhavato bayi. It's not that she's a pure devotee, right? And I said there are many people who mostly may be in the mode of goodness and who make calculations like that. And if you misinterpret that as, oh, she has to be a pure devotee also. No, it's not. She's calculating materially. So this devotee lady, she had a difficult time understanding it, but then, I kept explaining to her. I said, look, sometimes a dog licks the face of its owner. And the owner says, oh, how much does this dog love me? Just look at that. It's licking my face, But Prabhupada said once about that, he said, the dog is actually licking the face and thinking, one day I shall eat you also. See? So it's misinterpreting the dog. They interpret that as, oh, the dog is very affectionate. Look how much the dog loves me. The dog loves me more than my husband loves me, right? But not really. The dog is a carnivorous animal. And many times, you'll see, it happens every year in the United States. The family leaves the dog alone with the kid, with the baby, in the house. And sometimes there might be some dangerous situation and the dog saves the baby. And other times, the dog eats the baby while the parents are not home. It's happened. I've seen numerous times where the animal was left alone with the baby in the cradle or baby in the bed, and the animal killed the baby because they're carnivorous, right? Sometimes they also protect the baby. It happens both ways, But it doesn't mean that the dog is a pure devotee. So this is a hard verse to understand. 5th Canto, 18th chapter, 12th verse. So here Prabhupada, is he implying that Arjuna's soft-heartedness, which is a characteristic of a pure devotee, is a material calculation? And he begins the purport. It says, any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods. Whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. So Arjuna's soft-heartedness is a sign of a pure devotee. But, because, why? He is a devotee. He is a worshipper of Krishna. He is a person who surrenders to Krishna and asks Krishna, you tell me what is right for me to do. But in the case of a non-devotee, like this Christian woman, she's making a very intelligent material calculation, and the motivation is to protect her position and to keep her in the good, let's say, opinion, gain the good opinion and loyalty of her workers, so that she can protect her position and advance. So that's why I say it's a hard thing to understand. What is a material calculation and what is a genuine sign of a pure devotee. But here Prabhupada differentiates. However, later on, when Arjuna, now this crying of Arjuna and feeling of compassion and being overwhelmed by seeing all his relatives, Prabhupada says that's a sign of a pure devotee. But later on, when Arjuna gives so many philosophical and pseudo-philosophical reasons why he should not fight, Prabhupada explains that in the first chapter, first verse, he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, that means chapter 2, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. Arjuna is lamenting, right, that he has to kill so many people, or he's going to see so many people killed. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, in other words, doing nothing. And one with such a misunderstanding, this is what the Mayavadis and Buddhists, they think that real spiritual life is doing nothing, because that way you don't have any interactions with the modes of material nature and with people, and therefore you can control your mind and your senses by doing nothing, right? And one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. Now, I knew some people in France. They left France and they moved to Radha Kund, which, if you read the Nectar of Instruction, it says that Radha Kund is the holiest place in the whole universe, where Radha and Krishna had very intimate pastimes. It's the holiest place. And they dressed like Babajis, and they were chanting all day long and living there, instead of staying in France and doing Sankirtan and preaching and chanting, of course, 16 rounds. They were all trying to chant 64 rounds in Radha Kund, like the Babajis. So over time, one by one, they fell down. Now, how can you fall down? You're in the holiest place in the world, right? And then the rumors started coming out how they fell down. They all ended up smoking marijuana in Radha Kund and chanting Hare Krishna and meditating on Krishna's conjugal pastimes. They became phony devotees over time. And eventually they left Radha Kund and went back to material life. You see? That is Mayavad philosophy. I'm going to go in a secluded place and chant Hare Krishna and meditate on Krishna's conjugal pastimes. And to help me do that, I'm going to smoke some ganja. You see? So what does Prabhupada say? He says that, and I saw this with my own eyes. One time I went to Radha Kund some years ago, and they found out I was there, and they were all calling me. They were from a distance, and they would say, Harivilas, Harivilas, Haribol, Haribol. And I looked up and I saw the group, and I said, Haribol, and I left right away. I didn't want to talk to them because they're all smoking ganja, right? And who knows what else they were doing. So, but without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. So for many years, they had this cheap adoration. Everyone thought, oh, and other devotees were going because they heard, they were making so much advancement. And eventually the whole thing fell apart. It's like the hippie movement. It started out really idealistic, and later on it degraded into sense gratification, and then the whole thing fell apart. Right? It took some years, but it didn't last that long. So Arjuna also thought of Krishna or Buddhi Yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this 3rd chapter. So Prabhupada quotes in a letter written in 1969, in October 1969, he said, sometimes things are interpreted in a manner dovetailing one's own sense gratification. In the Gaudiya maths, different godbrothers took the words of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in different interpretations for sense gratification, and the whole mission was disrupted. You see, so basically, this is what now when Arjuna was crying out of genuine compassion, Prabhupada says that that's a symptom of pure devotee. But when he gave all these phony shastric evidences to avoid engaging in the battle, now he says that Krishna saw that he had a misunderstanding of what Krishna consciousness is. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi Yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. And then Prabhupada also says, sometimes things are misinterpreted in a manner dovetailing one's own sense gratification. And then he gives the example of Gaudiya Math that fell apart because they misinterpreted the instructions of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for their own sense gratification. They all wanted to become acharyas themselves. And they refused, and then they broke apart and did not form a governing body commission like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted. Anyway, we'll stop right there. It's a very interesting subject. We have to all be careful about misinterpreting the philosophy to support our sense gratification. I'll give you another example, last example. We had a pujari. He was a Filipino guy who was married to an American lady in Berkeley, California, when I was president there. And one day, he didn't come for his service. He wasn't even in the temple. So Mangal Aarti, devotees told me that he didn't come the night before for his service, and he wasn't there in the temple. He was staying in the temple with his wife. So later in the afternoon, he walks into the temple. I said, Prabhu, where were you? So I was doing some preaching, Prabhu. Oh, were you preaching to a man or a woman? He said, what's the difference? They're all jivas. They're all living entities. I said, I know. But I would like to know. I'm not on the same level as you are of philosophy. Were you preaching to a man or woman? He said, well, it was a woman. I said, did you stay up all night preaching to her? He said, yeah, how did you know? I said, I didn't know. I was just guessing, I said, did you have sex with her as part of your preaching? He said, I'm not going to answer that question. I said, look, you missed your service. You're a pujari. You're not allowed to miss your service. Or if you're going to miss your service, you have to call up and tell us. I said, this is not good. He said, look, I know how to chant Hare Krishna. I said, what? What does that mean? He said, I know how to chant Hare Krishna. That's what it means. I said, what are you trying to tell me? He said, even if I do something wrong, I chant Hare Krishna, I can fix it. I said, that is the seventh offense against the holy name. What's the seventh offense? To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. In other words, he was telling me that he had sex with that lady, and to fix it, he chanted Hare Krishna. And you see, that is exactly misinterpreting the philosophy in order to support your own sense gratification. And that's called the elephant offense. It's the worst offense you can commit against the holy name. When you use it to cover your, what you think to counteract that sense gratification that you voluntarily engaged in. It wasn't accidental, it was voluntary, right? Anyway, we'll stop right there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Translation of this purport, that is verse, it says, "Oh my Lord." Is that "Oh my Lord" or "Oh my Lord"? Oh my Lord. It says, "Oh my Lord." Oh my Lord. That's misspelled. Yeah, look. Here it says Lord. Oh, it says Lord. Oh, it says Lord over there.
No, on Vedabase also, not Vedabase. What is it? Vedabase.com, they also have a lot. One is 48.
Oh my Lord.
Oh, so in Vedabase online
this
also.
is Canto 1, Chapter 1.
Which verse?
No, the one which you covered today. 48.
1848.
Oh, let's take a look.
I think we have to tell them to fix it.
Oh, it says, oh my lot.
Yeah, same thing we have on this.
It's a mistake.
Veda Ves. I was looking Sanskrit translation. Is there anything lot?
Yeah.
Lot means the massacre of lot of people, like lot.
No.
Is it possible?
Is it like that on the Veda base?
Yeah, Veda Ves also I say.
Oh my lot?
Yeah.
It's like